Have you ever laid your head down on your pillow at the end of an exhausting day, completely spent in physical energy, only to find that your mind has suddenly decided to run a high-speed marathon? Or have you noticed that even during moments that are supposed to be relaxing, like a quiet weekend dinner or a walk through a park, an undercurrent of mental static keeps pulling your awareness back to uncompleted tasks, unresolved conflicts, or hypothetical future crises? You try to force yourself to calm down, you try to practice deep breathing, and you try to tell your brain to stop, but the gears just keep spinning faster and faster. In our modern hyper-accelerated culture, we are experiencing an absolute epidemic of chronic overthinking and mental restlessness. We treat a racing mind as an unexplainable personal flaw, a random system malfunction, or a generic symptom of modern anxiety that we just have to learn to manage. But if we pull back the curtain on this exhausting cognitive pattern, a far more profound truth comes into perspective. Your mind is never racing without a cause. It is spinning for a very specific reason, operating exactly as it has been trained to function. Welcome back to Everyday Better You, the dedicated sanctuary where we slow down the chaotic velocity of the outside world to reclaim absolute sovereignty over our internal clarity and mental strength. Our guiding light remains beautifully simple and steady, every day better by 1%. We do not trade in empty motivational jargon, superficial positive thinking, or quick fix psychological templates. Instead, we understand that permanent self-mastery is built through the small, clinical, and raw choices we make in our daily habits. Today, we are opening an aggressive investigation into the root architecture of your mental speed. We are going to unpack the hidden mechanisms, from neurological overstimulation and emotional avoidance to the subconscious storage of uncompleted psychological loops that keep your brain locked in a permanent state of high-gear hypervigilance. This conversation is a direct invitation to stop fighting the symptoms of your racing mind and start understanding its underlying language. Let us dismantle this modern cognitive trap and learn how to return your mind to a state of deep-rooted tranquility, step by step, day by day. Part 1. The chronic overload of information velocity. We live in an era where the human brain is being subjected to an unprecedented biological experiment. For 99% of human history, our ancestors processed information at the organic speed of their immediate physical environments. They woke up with the sun, engaged in slow analog labor, had long patches of quietness throughout their days, and allowed their thoughts to settle naturally when darkness fell. Today, we exist inside an artificial hyper-reality where we are plugged into a non-stop global fire hose of digital data 24 hours a day. From the moment we unlock our devices in the morning, our eyes and minds are pelted with a relentless stream of news headlines, work communications, algorithmically optimized videos, social updates, and advertising media. We treat this high-speed intake as a normal part of modern life, but your brain does not view it that way. Your mind is physically processing every single input, and when you bombard it with thousands of different data points every day, it naturally adapts by increasing its operational speed. A racing mind is simply a mind that has been heavily conditioned to match the chaotic velocity of its digital environment. To understand why your brain cannot slow down at night, you must look at how the prefrontal cortex handles information processing. Every piece of content you scroll past, every message you skim, and every notification banner that flashes across your screen requires a distinct unit of cognitive energy to analyze, categorize, and evaluate. This creates an intense state of chronic neurological hypervigilance. When you spend 12 consecutive hours jumping from one digital stimulus to another, your nervous system locks into a dominant state of sympathetic activation, commonly known as the fight or flight response. Your brain releases a steady stream of cortisol and dopamine to keep you alert and responsive to the constant influx of data. When you finally turn off your computer, slide your phone onto your nightstand, and close your eyes, you are expecting your brain to instantly shift from a state of maximum high-speed processing to a state of total stillness. This is a biological impossibility. The residual momentum of 12 hours of hyperstimulation keeps the cognitive engine revving at maximum RPMs long after you have stopped feeding it data. The primary error that millions of individuals make on a daily basis is assuming that their attention span can handle an infinite amount of superficial data without any psychological consequences. We see professionals who listen to high-speed podcasts while answering emails, or students who watch videos while reading textbooks, proudly calling it digital fluency. But this constant fragmentation of focus trains your brain to become hyperreactive and permanently impatient. you are actively building an internal habit of cognitive restlessness. Your mind becomes so habituated to a continuous delivery of high dopamine novelty that the absolute absence of stimulus feels like an intense emergency. When the external world goes quiet, your brain attempts to generate its own high-speed novelty by pulling up random worries, rehashing old arguments, or projecting future anxieties just to keep itself occupied. As elite focus strategists regularly demonstrate, a mind that is fed on continuous friction will inevitably create its own internal chaos when the external friction stops. To reverse this velocity overload and claim your 1% improvement today on this everyday better you journey, you must accept that your mind cannot be quiet if your day is loud. You need to introduce intentional cognitive deceleration into your daily routine. Start by establishing a policy of radical information fasting during your day's transitional moments. When you drive your car, choose to drive in absolute silence for the first 15 minutes. When you eat your lunch, completely refuse to look at a screen or read an article, forcing your mind to focus entirely on the physical experience of your food. Most importantly, design a non-negotiable 90-minute digital sunset before your head hits the pillow. Turn off all electronic screens, dim the lighting in your home, and allow your nervous system to slowly drop out of sympathetic hypervigilance. By giving your brain a spacious runway to wind down, you allow the residual momentum of the day's data to naturally dissipate, ensuring that your mind returns to its natural state of deep, rooted stability before you close your eyes. Part 2. The unconscious storage of uncompleted loops. One of the most powerful reasons your mind refuses to stay quiet is a well-documented psychological phenomenon known as the Zeigarnik effect. This cognitive principle demonstrates that the human brain possesses an innate biological drive to seek completion and resolution. When you begin a task, make a commitment, or experience an emotional conflict, your subconscious mind opens a distinct mental loop. If that loop is successfully completed, the brain closes the file and files it away into long-term memory. However, if that loop is left suspended, broken, or unaddressed, your subconscious mind refuses to let it go. It holds that loop wide open in your active working memory, continuously pulsing reminders to your conscious awareness to ensure that the task is not forgotten. In our modern frantic lifestyles, we are constantly opening dozens of these mental loops every single day without ever taking the time to close them, creating a massive buildup of unresolved cognitive debt that keeps our minds in a state of permanent racing anxiety. To look closely at the architecture of these open loops, we must look at how we navigate our obligations and boundaries. An open loop is not just a major unfinished project at your office. It is often a collection of microscopic, unexecuted commitments that you have made to yourself or others. It is the email you read but decided to reply to later, the disorganized pile of paperwork sitting on your desk, the awkward conversation you need to have with your partner but keep avoiding, or the promises you made to start exercising that you continuously break. Every single one of these unexecuted intentions acts like a background application running silently on a smartphone. In isolation, a single background app consumes very little processing power. But when you have 50 different applications running simultaneously, your device's battery drains rapidly, the operating system slows to a crawl, and the hardware begins to overheat. That is exactly what happens to your mind. A racing brain is an overheated cognitive engine trying to manage too many open background files at the same time. The misconception that traps millions of well-meaning individuals is the belief that they can successfully store all their commitments, ideas, and anxieties right inside their active minds. We tell ourselves that we have a sharp memory and that we can keep track of everything we need to do just by thinking about it. But your brain is an exquisite tool for generating ideas, analyzing concepts, and solving complex problems. It is an incredibly poor tool for storing data. When you force your working memory to act as a storage warehouse for your endless list of tasks and unspoken anxieties, you are keeping your prefrontal cortex in a state of chronic operational stress. Your mind races because it is terrified that if it stops spinning for even a single second, one of those wide open files will slip through the cracks and result in a disaster. The legendary organization master David Allen beautifully summarized this cognitive reality when he remarked, "Your mind is for having ideas, not holding them." This points directly to the truth that internal clarity can only be established when you empty your mental warehouse completely. To break free from this cognitive debt and elevate your personal execution by 1% today, you must transition from an undisciplined mental container to a highly structured external system. You must build a regular habit of performing a radical brain dump every single afternoon before you exit your workspace. Sit down with a physical notebook and a pen and completely empty your head of every single open loop, task, project, message, and vague anxiety currently floating around your awareness. Write them all down without any initial structure or filter until your mind feels completely empty. Once everything is captured on paper, organize those points into a clear, linear plan of execution for the following day. When your brain looks at a highly organized, externalized list on a piece of paper, it receives a powerful psychological signal that the commitments are safe and controlled. It no longer feels the hypervigilant need to pulse reminders into your awareness, allowing the open loops to close for the night and giving your mind the beautiful permission to drop into absolute tranquility. Part 3. Emotional avoidance and the distraction mechanism. Sometimes a racing mind is not a sign of organizational chaos or digital overstimulation. It is a highly sophisticated, subconscious defense mechanism designed to protect you from an underlying emotional truth. We live in a society that is deeply uncomfortable with raw, negative human emotions. We treat sadness, grief, loneliness, and existential uncertainty as structural defects that must be immediately fixed, drugged, or swept under the rug. When a heavy or painful emotion begins to rise within us, our immediate instinct is to look for an entry point into a distraction, running straight to a screen or a busy task to numb the sensation. But when you continuously refuse to allow an emotion to complete its natural biological life cycle, it does not disappear. It remains completely trapped within your nervous system. To prevent that heavy emotion from breaking through into your conscious awareness, your subconscious mind constructs an intense smokescreen of frantic mental activity. Your mind races to keep you so busy with thoughts that you do not have the emotional space to feel your actual pain. To understand how this distraction mechanism functions, we must examine the difference between deep analytical thinking and chronic emotional overthinking. When you are engaged in genuine, productive thought, your mind moves in a linear, logical direction toward a specific solution or insight. But when your mind is racing in circles, jumping frantically from one random worry to another without ever reaching a resolution, you are not actually thinking. You are practicing emotional evasion. Your brain is intentionally keeping the cognitive wheels spinning at maximum speed to act as an internal noise machine, drowning out the quiet, heavy voice of your underlying emotional wounds. You worry aggressively about your finances, your health, or your social reputation, not because those areas are in an immediate state of crisis, but because worrying about those external variables feels far safer than facing the profound loneliness, childhood trauma, or lack of authentic purpose currently rotting at the center of your soul. The primary error that keeps people trapped in a state of chronic mental acceleration is attempting to solve an emotional problem using pure intellectual analysis. We think that if we can just think long enough, read enough self-help articles, or analyze our anxieties from every possible angle, we will eventually find the magic key that makes the racing stop. But you can never intellectually analyze your way out of a feeling. By staying up in your head, analyzing your trauma like a clinical observer, you are actually practicing a highly sophisticated form of avoidance. You are using words, theories, and concepts to build a wall between your awareness and the raw physical ache living inside your body. The pioneering Swiss psychologist Carl Jung exposed this illusion of intellectual bypassing when he wrote, "The psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate." This reminds us that if you refuse to consciously feel and process your trapped emotional realities, your mind will continue to project them outward as an unshakable state of chronic mental anxiety and structural unrest. To dismantle this internal defense mechanism and claim your 1% breakthrough today on our Everyday Better You journey, you must find the courage to drop out of your head and step directly into your physical body. The next time your mind begins to race frantically, completely refuse to participate in the thoughts. Stop trying to argue with the worries. Stop trying to analyze the anxiety, and stop looking for an external distraction. Instead, close your eyes, sit perfectly still, and shift your entire awareness down into your physical form. Locate exactly where the physical residue of that emotional tension is living. Is it a tight pressure in your chest, a sharp knot in your stomach, a heavy ache in your throat? Focus your absolute attention on that physical sensation, breathing deeply and creating a warm, non-judgmental space around the discomfort. Allow the feeling to be exactly as loud and heavy as it wants to be without trying to fix it or make it go away. By choosing to feel the raw emotion rather than running back up into your head to think about it, you allow the trapped psychological energy to finally process through your nervous system, clearing the inner fog and returning your mind to an authentic, unshakable calm. Part 4. The core myth of predictable control. At the deep foundational bedrock of every racing mind lives a profound psychological attachment to a single, dangerous delusion: the myth of total control. We live in an unpredictable, volatile, and highly chaotic universe where the vast majority of external variables are completely independent of our desires. At any given moment, the economy can shift, a relationship can end, a health crisis can emerge, or a global event can completely disrupt our structured plans. For a mind that derives its security entirely from predictability, this inherent uncertainty feels like an existential threat. To cope with this permanent vulnerability, the anxious brain constructs a sophisticated survival strategy known as hyper-vigilant over-preparation. Your mind races because it is attempting to mentally rehearse every single potential disaster, visualize every negative scenario, and calculate every possible defense plan before it happens. You tell yourself that if you can just think through every single variable in advance, you can somehow outmaneuver the uncertainty of life and keep yourself completely safe from pain. This hypervigilant pattern creates a highly destructive psychological trap known as a false sense of security. When you spend hours mentally obsessing over a worst-case scenario, your brain mistakenly interprets that frantic imagination as an act of genuine protection. You feel as though you are doing the responsible work of preparation, when in reality, you are simply burning through your current cognitive resources to fight a ghost that does not exist. The human brain cannot distinguish between a highly detailed imaginary threat and a real physical danger happening right in front of it. When you visualize a future crisis, your nervous system responds by flooding your body with adrenaline and locking you into an intense state of chronic stress. You are essentially choosing to experience the pain of a potential catastrophe 100 times over in your imagination before it has even occurred a single time. In reality, you are trading your current internal peace for an illusion of future control. The error that prevents true cognitive freedom is confusing the concept of healthy, proactive planning with the concept of anxious hyperreactivity. Planning is a structured, time-bound activity where you analyze a situation, establish a clear strategy, and then execute your actions with calm confidence. Hypervigilant overthinking, however, is an infinite loop of ungrounded speculation that has no final boundary and leads to zero execution. It is the absolute opposite of strength. It is a total lack of trust in your own capacity to handle reality as it unfolds. The ancient Roman Stoic philosopher Seneca offered an incisive warning against this self-inflicted mental torture when he observed, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." This timeless truth cuts straight through the illusion of your racing mind, showing you that the primary source of your exhaustion is not the objective challenges of your life, but the chaotic, unbridled movies you are continuously running inside your own head. To conquer this attachment to control and step forward by 1% today on your everyday better you path, you must build a firm policy of radical alignment with the present moment. You must learn to separate the variables you control from the infinite variables you do not. Sit down with a physical notebook and draw a clear line down the center of a page. On the left side, list the absolute microscopic actions you can take right now to improve your current situation. On the right side, list every single external variable, future outcome, and opinion of others that you possess zero power to dictate. Once the list is complete, make a non-negotiable vow to lock your entire energy onto the left column, completely surrendering the right column to the natural unfolding of reality. When your mind tries to drag you back into future speculation, pull yourself back to the center of your immediate execution with the cold certainty of a Stoic commander. By choosing to trust your capacity to adapt to whatever happens tomorrow rather than trying to predict it today, you release the burden of control, allowing your mind to finally settle into a state of deep-rooted tranquility. Part 5. The Trap of Performance, Identity, and Worth. For many high-achieving individuals, a racing mind is the direct product of a deeply compromised relationship with their own self-worth. We live in a competitive, capitalist, modern culture that has systematically conditioned us to link our value as human beings to our external output, our professional achievements, and our social status symbols. From a very young age, we are taught that we are only valuable when we are producing, winning, accumulating, or performing at a premium level. This externalization of self-worth creates an intense underlying psychological terror of failure, stillness, and mediocrity. If you believe that your basic right to be loved and respected depends on your next achievement, your mind will treat any moment of rest or non-production as a dangerous system failure. Your mind races because it has become an internal taskmaster, continuously cracking the whip of overthinking to keep you running at maximum speed so that you never have to face the terrifying possibility of being deemed insufficient. This performance identity turns your inner life into a permanent, exhausting courtroom trial where you are simultaneously the defendant, the prosecutor, and the judge. Every single day, you feel an immense pressure to prove your worth through relentless activity, overanalyzing every interaction, overplanning every career step, and continuously monitoring how you look to the public eye. When you try to sit quietly or take a day off, a profound sense of guilt and restlessness immediately floods your awareness. You interpret this discomfort as a sign that you are naturally wired to be a workaholic, but it is actually a symptom of deep psychological codependency on external validation. You cannot stop thinking because you are terrified that if you stop moving, your achievements will fade, your status will slide, and your true worthlessness will be exposed to the world. A racing mind is often the screaming voice of an inner child who has forgotten how to feel safe without a trophy in their hand. The primary error that keeps people locked in this cycle of high-speed exhaustion is the belief that they can finally earn their way into internal peace by achieving just one more goal. We tell ourselves that once we get that promotion, secure that specific financial number, or complete that massive project, we will finally allow our minds to slow down and enjoy our lives. But this is a complete psychological mirage. The destination of enough does not exist within a mindset that is structured on performance identity. The moment you cross your current finish line, your brain chemistry immediately adapts to the new baseline, resets the parameters of success, and demands that you begin running toward the next distant milestone. You are running on an endless treadmill of external validation, burning through your current mental health to buy a temporary hit of external praise. The brilliant Stoic Emperor Marcus Aurelius pointed directly to the hollow nature of this pursuit when he wrote, "Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions." To shatter this performance trap and secure your 1% daily growth today on this everyday better you journey, you must aggressively separate your human worth from your professional output. You must build a firm, non-negotiable daily boundary around your identity that has absolutely nothing to do with production or performance. Dedicate the first hour of your morning and the final hour of your night to slow, non-instrumental activities that exist solely for the sake of nourishment. Read philosophy, spend time with your loved ones, walk in nature, or write in a journal without any expectation of turning those actions into a goal or a result. When the voice of your performance identity tries to flood your mind with guilt during your rest hours, look at it with calm detachment and say to yourself, my value as a human being is unconditional and my rest is a non-negotiable act of self-respect. By choosing to step off the validation treadmill, you starve the internal taskmaster of its power, allowing your mind to drop into a profound, authentic peace that does not depend on a single external trophy. Part 6, Neurological Exhaustion and the Physical Fuel Crisis. When analyzing a racing mind, we cannot afford to look at the issue through a purely psychological or philosophical lens. We must remember that your mind does not exist in an abstract vacuum. It is a direct biological product of your physical brain, which is an intensely demanding organ that lives within your physical body. Your brain accounts for only about 2% of your total body weight, yet it consumes more than 20% of your body's total metabolic energy and oxygen supplies. To operate with calm, stability, deep focus, and accurate emotional regulation, your prefrontal cortex requires a massive continuous delivery of clean fuel, hydration, and restorative sleep. In our modern lifestyle, we systematically starve our physical bodies of these baseline biological requirements, feeding them processed toxins, chemical stimulants, and chronic sleep deprivation, while simultaneously demanding that our minds remain calm and clear. A racing mind is often the physiological scream of an exhausted, chemically imbalanced brain experiencing an acute fuel crisis. To understand why a lack of physical care leads straight to mental acceleration, we must look at how the brain manages emotional boundaries under a state of fatigue. The prefrontal cortex acts as the internal brake system of your mind. It is the specific neurological region responsible for downregulating the amygdala, which is the ancient survival engine that generates immediate impulses of fear, anxiety, and obsessive worry. When your body is healthy, hydrated, and deeply rested, Your prefrontal cortex possesses the metabolic fuel necessary to execute its braking function efficiently, allowing you to quickly acknowledge a random worry and shut it down before it gains momentum. However, when you are chronically sleep-deprived, dehydrated, and fueled on high fructose sugars, your prefrontal cortex suffers a severe energy deficit. It loses its capacity to enforce the internal brakes. Your amygdala takes full control of the cockpit, sending a continuous, unchecked flood of hyperreactive worries and erratic thoughts right into your awareness. Your mind is not racing because it has too much energy. It is racing because it has lost the physical power to slow itself down. The common misconception that traps millions of individuals in a cycle of health neglect is the belief that they can fix a physiological brain crisis using purely mental interventions. We see people who are sleeping 4 hours a night and drinking 6 cups of industrial coffee every day, attempting to fix their chronic anxiety by practicing 5 minutes of shallow meditation or reading books on mindfulness. This is the equivalent of trying to fix a completely broken car engine by giving it a fresh coat of external paint. Strategies can never overpace the brutal biological reality of a neglected nervous system. When you flood your body with artificial caffeine and chemical stimulants throughout the day, you are forcing your adrenal glands to continuously pump stress hormones into your bloodstream. You are keeping your physical body in an artificial state of biological panic, making a calm mind an absolute impossibility. The ancient Roman philosopher Cicero provided an immutable foundation for this body-mind connection when he wrote, "To achieve a wise life, you must first maintain the health of the vessel that holds the mind. To resolve this physical fuel crisis and advance by 1% today on your everyday better you path, you must treat your baseline biological health with the cold, uncompromising discipline of an elite athlete. Stop viewing sleep, hydration, and nutrition as luxury choices that you can squeeze into your schedule whenever you have time. They are the non-negotiable raw materials of your sanity. Commit today to achieving a minimum of 7 hours of high-quality sleep every single night, treating your bedtime with the exact same professional respect you show to an important business meeting. Eliminate all chemical stimulants and artificial caffeine after 12 o'clock in the afternoon, allowing your body's natural adenosine levels to regulate your internal sleep-wake cycle cleanly. Drink a full glass of clean water the moment you open your eyes in the morning to reverse the structural dehydration of the night. By choosing to honor the biological laws of your physical vessel, you provide your prefrontal cortex with the high-grade metabolic fuel it requires to restore its internal braking systems, turning off the engine of chronic overthinking and building a mind that is naturally calm, focused, and unshakable. Part 7. Reclaiming the sovereign command of the present. The ultimate objective of investigating the root architecture of your racing mind is not to achieve a state of permanent, passive numbness where you never experience another urgent thought, complex analytical challenge, or wave of natural human hesitation. A completely quiet mind is not a sign of wisdom. It is an indication of absolute cognitive disengagement. Your mind was engineered to think, create, plan, and analyze with intense velocity. The true tragedy of the modern digital landscape is not that our minds possess the capacity to move fast, but that we have completely lost the internal steering mechanisms. We have allowed our attention spans to be outsourced to external algorithms, corporate notifications, and inherited psychological defense mechanisms, turning our intellect into a reactive, automated machine that spins uncontrollably in circles for the sake of external profit or deep avoidance. The core of our journey on Everyday Better You is to take back the steering wheel of our focus, transitioning from passive, exhausted victims of overthinking to becoming the deliberate, sovereign commanders of our current awareness. To take back this command, you must understand a profound psychological boundary. You are not your thoughts. When a random worry about your future, an obsessive recollection of a past mistake, or an erratic wave of social anxiety rushes into your head, your default habit is to instantly identify with that thought. You treat it as an absolute truth, wrap your identity around it, and allow it to drag your entire emotional state down into a dark valley of stress. But a thought is not a command. It is simply a temporary piece of mental data, a brief neural spark generated by an exhausted brain or an old survival habit. You do not choose the first initial thought that bubbles up from the deep basement of your subconscious mind, but you possess absolute sovereign control over whether you choose to feed that thought your current attention or let it pass away like a cloud across an open sky. Discipline is the capacity to watch your mind race from a position of calm, independent observation, refusing to let the speed of the thoughts dictate the stability of your character. The final mistake that keeps people trapped in a state of chronic mental acceleration is attempting to force their thoughts to stop through aggressive mental resistance. When you identify a racing thought and try to fight it using willpower, screaming at your brain to calm down, you are actually investing more of your current focus and emotional energy right into that thought. You are adding fuel to the very fire you are trying to extinguish. The harder you fight a worry, the more powerful and solid it becomes within your awareness. The art of mental sovereignty is not the presence of aggressive resistance, it is the practice of total non-reaction. When a chaotic thought emerges, you do not fight it, you do not analyze it, and you do not run away from it. You simply look at it, acknowledge its existence with a calm sense of detachment, and deliberately return your attention to the physical reality of the task currently in front of your eyes. The ancient Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius captured this magnificent internal power perfectly when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." To implement this ultimate command and secure your final 1% breakthrough today, you must treat your current moment as an absolute fortress that no racing thought has the right to breach. Begin practicing the discipline of single-point execution throughout your day. When you are writing an email, let your entire universe shrink down to the specific words on your monitor, treating every future worry as completely irrelevant background noise. When you walk down a street, lock your awareness true into the physical sensation of your feet striking the ground and the texture of the air against your skin. When an obsessive thought pattern tries to drag you into future speculation or past regret, pause, take one deep breath, label the pattern as empty noise, and bring your focus back to the exact physical action your hands are executing right now. By choosing to anchor your awareness firmly into the present reality, you starve the engine of chronic overthinking of its primary fuel. You break the automated chains of distraction, building a mind that moves with absolute precision, remains anchored in unshakable internal peace, and grows wiser, stronger, and better every single day. We have traveled through an intensely deep, raw, and transformative investigation together today, carefully stripping away the hurt advice of modern self-help to look directly into the structural reasons why your mind refuses to slow down. We have unpacked the chronic overload of digital velocity that keeps your nervous system in a state of permanent hyperstimulation, the psychological debt of uncompleted loops running silently in your working memory, the sophisticated mechanism of emotional avoidance that uses overthinking as a protective smokescreen, the hollow myth of total control that drives us to analyze non-existent future crises, the toxic trap of linking your human worth to external performance, the physical fuel crisis of a neglected body that leaves the brain without its braking power, and the ultimate discipline required to take back sovereign command of your attention in the present moment. Remember, your mind is never racing without a reason. It is a highly sensitive instrument that is simply mirroring the inputs, habits, and unresolved conflicts you have allowed to enter your inner temple. As we bring this powerful episode of Everyday Better You to its natural close, let us look toward our steady, unchanging northern star, every day better by 1%. You do not need to perform a massive, impossible transformation of your psychology by tonight to experience real mental clarity. Excellence is never built that way. Instead, lock your entire intent onto winning just one single conscious battle over the upcoming hours. Take 10 minutes to sit in absolute silence without a screen, perform a radical brain dump on a piece of paper before you close your eyes, or turn off your devices an hour earlier tonight to give your physical vessel the deep, restorative rest it deserves. Each small choice to protect your attention is a magnificent declaration of your mental freedom. Thank you for slowing down the chaos of the world to invest deeply in the quality of your character with me today. Guard your focus fiercely, protect your standards with absolute dedication, and keep building a deeper, wiser, and truer version of yourself. Until next time, stay completely intentional, stay beautifully grounded, and keep growing better every single day.